record. We're in the middle of chapter 44. In the standard print, it's page Samech Gimel. It's about 12 lines from the bottom. And the last four words on the line is Va'af mi hu zeh. And although who is there, who would be so sort of chutzpahdik to approach such a level. Just a quick moment of recap, and then we move forward. We are talking here in this chapter about how a person can engage their love for Hashem. As we have mentioned, that one of the messages of Hasidus, maybe the whole Chiddush of Hasidus, is that rather than just looking at what are virtuous character traits and then hoping that we will one day be able to find out that we're like that. You know, I like it. I happen to like chocolate, and I like Hashem. The character of the love for Hashem is in fact something that we can consciously develop, nourish, and expand. It's not just either you get it or you don't. It's not just a happenstance. And in this chapter in particular, we are speaking about strategies to generate that love, or maybe I should say, first we have to understand what that love is. And when we understand it, we can work on generating it and making it move forward, making it flourish. So we've talked primarily here about two different levels of love. And again, this is one of the gifts that Hasidus gives us, is that it puts definable terms around amorphous concepts. So we're able to put structure on something that seems innately to just be theoretical. So when we're talking about love, we start to really break it down and make it something much more sort of scientific than we might otherwise think of it as. And we've talked about Avas Olam, that is a love born of this world. I look at the world, I see its intricacy, I see its sophistication, I appreciate it because my greatest passion is to be alive. And from there, I deduce that there must be a world maker, and I want to be associated with that world maker. The limitation on that love is that it's tethered to my capacity to appreciate it. Then we move to a more profound level of love, which is a Ava Rabba, an overflowing level of love, which is not linked or contained or nuanced by my capacity to appreciate it. So here the Alter Rebbe really gives us one of those startling points here, because a common theme that we've had in Tanya up until this point is that everybody is born with a sort of limited neshama, even though the essence of every neshama comes from the same source, whether the person is Moshe Rabbeinu or they're the simplest of people, a little bit like we were talking before about the Haman Mordechai. Nevertheless, in the development, and again, remember the analogy from the development of the child, even though it's true that the brain matter, which is the most sophisticated, and the fingernails, which is the least sophisticated, are both sourced in the same original entity, but there is a difference between fingernails and brains. It's like we talk about, every day is holy, every day is holy. You know, Yom Kippur is still special. Every place is holy, every place is holy. Yerushalayim, the Beis HaMikdash, is still special. And we've talked about that a lot in the earlier chapters, particularly when it comes to the arena of achievement. That tzaddik is not available for everybody. Not everybody can just be a tzaddik if you will try. You may recall last week we talked about the statement of the Vilna Gaon, who made a play on the word. He said, Vilna, if you want it, you can do it. Anyone can do it. Anyone can do what I can do. It's very humble and beautiful, but it's not actually true. Not everybody can be a tzaddik. Now, in this chapter, the Alter Rebbe sort of offers up that, well, yes, you can. That unattainable level, everyone can at least aspire to it, to the level of love of Moshe Rabbeinu. So here we go. V'af ki mi hu zeh, even though you would say, who am I? Ve'ezehu, and how is this one? How is it possible? Asher, that Orav Libai. Now, Orav Libai translates as would have such a rich heart. Who would have such a rich heart? Lageshes, to approach, lahasik, to comprehend. Afilu chelik echad, even 1 percentage point, mine elef mimadregas avas raya mehemna, of the 1,000, 1 out of 1,000, some exaggerated level of the love of the trusted shepherd. The trusted shepherd, you recall, is Moshe Rabbeinu. We had that a few chapters ago when we described that Moshe Rabbeinu was not only a shepherd you can trust, which we talked about the history of shepherds and their reputation, but it's also about a shepherd who instills trust within his people. This is Moshe Rabbeinu. So you'd think, how am I possibly going to approach the level of Moshe Rabbeinu? It seems chutzpahdik to even make a suggestion. And until this point, we have always sort of followed that path, that it's not your objective to be Moshe Rabbeinu. You don't have to attain the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's not expected. It's not even within your capacities, et cetera, all the different things which we discussed. So yet here, the Alter Rebbe is sort of pushing us at least towards the aspiration of Ava Rabbah, of this overflowing level of love. B'kol makom, nevertheless, and here is a classic point that we have seen in Tanya. Harei efes katsehu, somewhat, a little edge of it, v'shemetz minehu, and a little smudge of it. I mean, that's probably the closest word. I mean, we're familiar with the word shmutz, which is a play on this word, shemetz. It means a tiny residue of it, a tiny residual impact to some itsy bitsy part. I mean, I don't know a different word to use, but it's that word. The word shmutz comes from this word, shemetz minehu. Miroiv tuvai va'oiroi, from this abundant good and light. What is this abundant good and light? This refers to the Ava. A nice little parallel coming now to tonight, of course, is Hanukkah, and our rule that a little light pushes away a lot of darkness. This is a rule that the Alter Rebbe has taught us in our battle with the animal soul, that our goal is not to defeat the animal soul directly, rather that we turn on the light of the godly soul. And as a consequence of that, it chases the animal soul away. There's that old saying, darkness is a coward, turn on the light and it runs away. So because just like light is not containable, I mean, it is measurable. And this is why light is a wonderful metaphor or analogy for the neshama. Because on the one hand, it is measurable. You can measure the lumens. You can measure its intensity. On the other hand, it's not really containable. But if you ever try to totally darken a room, back in the olden days, remember when we used to do film in a dark room, it doesn't exist anymore, but it's very difficult to get total darkness because light finds its way in. Because of the character of light, which is similar here, we're saying, to the character of love, that it spills over. And similarly, Moshe Rabbeinu's level spills over to all of us. You almost can't help yourself from being caught up in the abundance, in the limitlessness, that's the better word, of Moshe Rabbeinu's love. Now, again, the Alter Rebbe, in the question, he sort of alludes to the answer. The first line we read today was, who is it that arev liboy? Now, we might translate that in English, in an English expression as, who do you think you are that you're going to have a level of love like Hashem? Get over yourself, buddy. But here the Alter Rebbe is very particular. He does not write, who do you think you are? That is, he does not address it to some sort of intellectual capacity. Rather, he addresses it to the character of the heart. Whose heart is so rich that they could reach this level? And one of the distinctive qualities of heart over mind, and here's where we're getting this is really one of those turning points, and I think I mean that even literally, in Tanya. Until now, we've been Chabad. Mind rules the heart, mind rules the heart. The heart is the seat of the animal soul. The heart is impulsive. The heart responds. The heart likes things. It doesn't consider whether they're virtuous or not. It just is attracted to it. And we need to use our mind to imagine that there's something more than just the immediate pleasure that's staring me in the face. And we need to engage our intellect to restrain our heart and overrule our heart and maybe train our heart. All valid strategies and the themes of Tanya. Here, the Alter Rebbe starts to talk to us about appealing directly to our heart. Now, in part, it's because we're 44 chapters into it. And now we start to trust ourselves. In the Chitas process, we started over since last week, Yutes Kislev, and today we started chapter 1 of Tanya. And you're going to, for those who are studying on the Chitas cycle as well, you start to see, very much this message that don't act out of impulse. Don't trust your heart. If something comes from the heart, be suspicious of it. It's likely something that's coming from a self-serving place. It's not coming from a godly place. A lot of caution associated with impulses that come from the heart. In contrast, we talk about engaging the intellect. Engage the intellect, be very, what's the word I'm looking for? Cerebral about it. But here the Alter Rebbe starts to turn to us and says, okay, now we're in the heart. We're 44 chapters into this. We are now talking directly to the love that we have for Hashem. And if you think, who am I that my heart should be so rich with so much love? Well, the Alter Rebbe says, yes, your heart does have this much love within it. And the non-limited character of love is an opportunity to make it move forward, as we'll see. Meir lechlolis Yisrael, because this gift from Hashem radiates to the Jewish people, b'chol dor v'dor, in every generation, meaning it is an ongoing gift. I mean, this we know even beyond the messages of Tanya. I mean, that Torah has an eternal message for us, which is why we study Torah when we're 4 and when we're 34 and 74 and, God willing, 124. Because there's this endless message for it. In a similar vein, there's this endless gift of love that Hashem provides to all of, that Moshe Rabbeinu provides to all of the generations of the Jewish people that spills over to us. Now, how does that occur? The Alter Rebbe is going to walk us through it here, but a moment of introduction. One is, this is one of the great blessings of the Jewish people, that we have been blessed with Moshe Rabbeinus in every generation. The Talmud says that Mordechai in the Purim story was like the Moshe Rabbeinu of his generation. Not just that they are righteous themselves, more profoundly, and I guess more importantly, that they instilled in the generation a passion and love for Hashem, that they uplift the generation. That is truly the sign of a great or a true Jewish leader. The Raya Mehemna, the trusted shepherd, is the shepherd, the leader who instills trust within his people. And then, in addition to that, there's the impact it has on each one of us that we have access to it. We have access to the not only the teachings, which is obviously what we study in Torah, but it's the capacity to be aligned with Hashem. I'll share with you, maybe this gives us a better insight. You may have played this game at some point. People say, if you could meet any biblical character, who would you like to meet? And it says something about us, and it says something about our curiosity. We would say, not that I'm against that sort of exercise, it's a fun way and an interesting and insightful way. But I would say, if you really want to meet the characters, meaning not just who would you like to meet, but would you actually like to meet them, the greatest opportunity for meeting them is through studying Torah. Meaning when we study Torah, we're not just learning about somebody named Moshe or King David or whoever it is, we actually live with them. We find this because the Talmud says that whenever a person quotes an author, it's like that author's lips are moving. And this is why everything is in the current tense. In the Talmud, we say, Hillel says, not Hillel said, because he's saying it right now. So we have access to the actual experience with Moshe Rabbeinu and each of the tzaddikim and so forth. So one is that this has been forever embedded within our identity. It's part of our spiritual makeup. It's like our standard equipment that we come with out of the factory, that we are innately programmed to be able to have a level of love for Hashem that overrides any other love. Remember, as we've talked about so many times, when we say we love Hashem, we don't just mean it's my favorite thing, like I love swimming, like it's the thing that I look forward to the most. We mean that I love Hashem more than I love any other thing as such. In the moment when I have a choice between doing what Hashem wants and doing what I want, I will love Hashem more and do what Hashem wants rather than what I want. That's what it truly means to love Hashem. Not because of all the things Hashem does for me. Why do you love Hashem? Well, he does this for me and he does that for me. Would be like saying, why do you love your children? And then you start to describe all the great things they do. And I say, well, what if I could find you somebody who does something better? Would you trade your children in for those children? Obviously not. I hope. Why? Because it's not about the mercantile exchange of goods and services. Like I might say, and we use this term, I love that store because they're all so nice and they have the best prices and the best quality. Because tomorrow they're not so nice, they don't have the best prices, they don't have the best quality. That's it. I go to the next store. So it's about my desire to be connected with Hashem. Like it says in the Zohar, that in every generation, Hashem dispatches to us Moshe Rabbeinu's, these great leaders, with whom we can not only learn from them and not only admire them, but we can, be uplifted and lean on their love of Hashem to enrich and support our love of Hashem. Now, again, way back in the beginning of Tanya, you may recall that the Alter Rebbe, when he's talking about how every neshama can have an absolute ongoing relationship with Hashem, even if that neshama says, well, I don't really feel, I'm not very sensitized to godliness. So the Alter Rebbe used that metaphor of the conception of a child. And he said that every part of the child, from the least sophisticated, the fingernails, to the most sophisticated, the brain matter, is the product of the same act of conception and so forth. And then the Alter Rebbe said, and how then, once the child is born, is their body sustained? Through the brain. And that is through the great tzaddikim of the generation. That it is a collective effort that everybody becomes uplifted, transformed, inspired, and so forth from the Moshe Rabbeinu of their generation. Now, the question is, why are we pointing so much to Moshe Rabbeinu, or a question is, I should say, why are we pointing so much to Moshe Rabbeinu in the description of love, when we think of the historical leader who was the gift of love? We would think that this is Avram Avinu. He's Avram, who's beloved, the one who offers kindness to the strangers, etc. Why is it that we are pointing the finger to Moshe Rabbeinu as the teacher of love, the bequeather of love? Isn't it Avram Avinu who bequeaths love? And so we explain that there are two stages. Yes, it is Avram who created and impacts within our identity this quality that we have love for Hashem. And again, love meaning I want to be associated with that. I want to be connected with Hashem. What then is the Moshe Rabbeinu quality? So as we learned already 2 chapters ago, and there we were talking about the reverence of Hashem. You remember the quote that Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Jewish people, what is it that Hashem asks of you? Question mark. Answer, only that you should fear him, which prompts the seemingly obvious question, and is fear such a small thing? And the Talmud answers, yes, for Moshe Rabbeinu, it's a small thing, which prompted our question, but we are not Moshe Rabbeinu. From whence we deduced that Moshe Rabbeinu embedded within us, trained us, taught us, models for us, how in fact we can access that fear. Because what Moshe Rabbeinu teaches us is the ability to engage our das. And remember, we talked about that das is the quality to take what we know into how we feel and what we do. So I know that I should vote in every election and budget and always wear my seatbelt and so on, but I don't always feel it in my heart. There's a disconnect between my academic awareness and my emotional character. So Moshe Rabbeinu is the connector. He is that quality called das, which connects the academic to the character. So just like we talked about that a couple of chapters ago, in the Yira quality, in the sense of my fear of being disconnected from Hashem, so here as well, we are talking about engaging that Moshe Rabbeinu quality to actualize the love that is my natural desire to be associated with Hashem. Again, when we say love, we don't only mean it's my favorite thing to do. We mean I want to be connected with that more than I want to be engaged in whatever other activity it is. That's what's most important. I'm with my people. I actually was speaking to the yeshiva kids in the Masifta about going on Mitzayim, and they said, well, what do you say if somebody makes this argument or that argument? And I told them that when you're going out, giving out Hanukkah menorahs, it's not a time for arguments, because when you win arguments, you lose friends. You win an argument, you defeat them, you show them that I'm right and you're wrong. Maybe you'll bully him into lighting the menorah, but probably not. He's just going to resent it. So what we are looking for is to evoke this innate quality that I want to be connected with Hashem. That is our innate quality, just like a person naturally wants to be healthy. Nobody wants to be sick. But what happens is we think, oh, this won't hurt me and it won't bother me, et cetera, et cetera. So this is that Moshe Rabbeinu quality. Pardon me. Okay, so here we continue. Rak sha'ara zo he bechinas hester v'helam gadol when a fasha is called Beis Yisrael. What's happened? This innate love of Hashem is embedded, but it's hidden. It's tucked away in the house of, in the heart of every, in the soul of every one of the house of Israel. Now, this is a curious phrase, the house of Israel. We know Bnei Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Yisrael. What does it mean, the house of Israel, called Beis Yisrael? So we find a curious distinction, excuse me, in the difference between the description of the mourning post the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu in contrast to the mourning post the passing of Aaron, Moshe's brother. When Moshe Rabbeinu dies at the end of Torah, it says that he was mourned by all the children of Israel. When Aaron dies, it says he was mourned by all the household of Israel. This phrase here, called Beis Yisrael. So, of course, we pick up on this and say, what is the difference? And we explain that Moshe Rabbeinu was mourned differently by every individual because Moshe Rabbeinu was the teacher. So, just like with the teacher, some you understand more, some you understand less. The more you understand it, the more you appreciate him. Aaron, who is the man who loved peace, pursued peace, and brought the people to Torah, as it says in Pirkei Avos, and we all know the story about how he would go out and make peace amongst quarreling community members, so that everybody loved him equally. The household, that is that family characteristic. Why does a child love the parent? So again, God forbid, it can become spoiled or it can become enriched. But the innate love that a child has to the parent is not because they make the best tuna fish sandwich. The innate love the child has for the parent is because they, that is the child, and the parent are of the same fabric. And this is embedded in the nefesh of the Yisrael. So I think the Alter Rebbe's point is to underscore that the word household of Israel and nefesh, that it's embedded in the nefesh, is to highlight this natural alignment between child and parent, between the Jew and Hashem. So what then is our objective? And I say this half jokingly, all you got to do, certainly it's much more difficult than it sounds, but what it is telling us is that we don't have to create this desire to be connected with Hashem. We do have to, and this is effort, and I don't mean to minimize it, but at least we have a path, we have some sort of direction. The objective is to reveal that innate love that can get buried underneath all the pursuits of the material and the physical and our impetuousness and our impatience, et cetera, just like the parent and the child. The parent loves the child loves the parent. What happens? This one gets annoyed, but that one is because different things happen. There's a story told about the Rav of the Chabad community. His name was Rabbi Gorelik in Eretz Yisrael. And one time he made a certain ruling that this person didn't like. So they let them know that they didn't like him. They thought he was an evil guy. So somebody said to this person who was upset, they said, if your child would grow up to be like the Rav, would you be happy? Oh, I'd be thrilled. He's the rabbi. He's a great rabbi. And so, okay, in the moment, they lose their temper and they become upset and annoyed. And, whatever it is, somebody did something that annoyed them. Or we got distracted and we became obsessed with something outside of our proper way. We lost our way. So this is the Alter Rebbe's point, that a person innately desires to be in a relationship with Hashem. What happens? It gets concealed. So, here there's the counter to, it's our contemporary issue where people say, do you believe in God? As if it's something that we decide at some later point. Our argument is that we are innately born this way with an awareness. But what happens? It gets distracted. It gets corroded with materialism or just other things, or society knocks it out of us, et cetera, et cetera. Rabbi Manis Friedman poses it this way. He says, for whom is it more difficult? For the person who grows up in a Torah environment, in the 1930s, and then sees the decimation of our people, or for the person who grows up in total American materialism, where anything other than, quote, success is mocked and diminished and discarded and criticized. For whom is it harder to have a real connection with Hashem? Someone who had a connection and then saw such decimation, or somebody who had a natural desire or curiosity about it and just had it dismissed and poo-pooed and infantilized by saying, oh, that's just a bunch of stories and it's good for Hebrew school and leave me alone. For whom is it more difficult to overcome? I don't know, and it's not a yes, no. But this is what the Alter Rebbe is talking about. A person, a neshama, naturally desires to be connected with Hashem, like a child naturally desires to be connected with their parent. What could happen is it gets concealed. And therefore, what we need to do is evoke it. And that, lei neflesa v'lei rechoikehi. You recognize this? This is the opening line, the title page of Tanya. This quote, that behold, it is very near to you, in your heart and in your mouth, that you may do it. The preceding lines, what does it say just before that? Torah it's not neflesa, it's not wondrous, and it's not distant. Rather, it is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. So the line that precedes it is, it's not far away from you. Now, neflesa, the root word there means like fantastic, pella. It's even more dramatic than a miracle. So this is another common argument. If I would see a miracle, if I would see the splitting of the sea, if I would see the dead coming to life, if I would have manna drop from heaven, if I would get it, whatever, then I would believe in Hashem. And we're saying it's not in the fleisihi. It's not something that needs to be instilled within the person as the result of some miracle. It is innate to their identity. Again, just like physical health, God willing, everybody's born physically healthy, and their health can become corroded and corrupted through whatever it is, poor choices, etc. Of course, there are people who are born with issues. That's not what we're discussing here. And for most things, we snap back to eating right and drinking water and exercise and so on, and our natural health comes back. Again, our greatest objective is to restore our natural health. Yeah, of course, there can be extreme measures, etc. So this is what the Alter Rebbe is saying. It's not in the place. It doesn't need some sort of miraculous experience to implant it. And it's not rechoika. It's not far away. The verse reads, it's not across the sea that we shall say, who will go across the sea to retrieve it? It's not in the heavens that we should say, who will go to the heavens to retrieve it? It's not like, well, if I lived there, if I had this experience, I'd love to, but it is innate to us in our mouth and in our heart that we may do it. And again, as we have talked about, the whole basis of Tanya is, in fact, this phrase. The hind of that is, that it should be common on our mouth, so to speak, and on our tongue, to arouse, to stimulate our heart and our intellect, to think about it, because this is the key. Again, to reset the table, we are taking as a premise that you come out of the factory with a natural desire to be connected with Hashem. What happens? It gets covered over with all kinds of distraction. What is the remedy? That we engage the Moshe Rabbeinu quality, which is our intellect, which that can never be smothered, to elicit it. Again, it's a little bit of a Hanukkah lesson. One of the great lessons of Hanukkah is that no matter how defiled our Beis Hamikdash becomes, if we will look long enough and hard enough, we will in fact find that cruise of pure olive oil that will light up miraculously for 8 days. But you do have to look for it. Sometimes it's more obvious, and sometimes if the Beis Hamikdash has been desecrated, it's not so obvious. It's not obvious at all. We have to think about this idea that Hashem is in fact our Father. That is, we have an intuitive, natural connection with God. Umakar chayenu, in the source of our life. And again, using it, even though it's sort of self-serving, Hashem is my life. I love Hashem. I'll do anything to protect my life, defend myself. I'll do anything to protect and preserve my relationship with Hashem, and despise anything that will try to harm me. And it's mamish. It's not just an idea. And again, we're shooting for this child-parent relationship love, which is innate. Meaning, if I met this person on the street, I may not like them that much, but I know it's my parent. I have an innate desire to be connected with them. And if we will do it constantly, unchanging, it will become our nature. It may feel phony. It is a curiosity. If you look in the older print of the Siddur, not the annotated Siddur, I don't know why they took it out, but in the older print, so right in the beginning, after you say morning brachas, before you say matovu, there's a line, and it says, there's an instruction. It says, it is correct to say before the davening, I hereby take upon myself the mitzvah, the positive obligation to love my neighbors myself. It's appropriate to say before davening. So the great chassid, Remendel Futafas, used to, when he would daven, which he did for hours and hours, he would read that instructional line. It's appropriate to say before davening, I hereby. So people are like, why you read that? It's like reading the page number. Why you read? You don't read stand up, sit down, congregation, amen. Why are you reading the line, the instruction? It is appropriate to say before davening. So he said, look, can I honestly say that I have truly accepted upon myself the commandment to love my neighbor as myself? I don't know if I can honestly say it, but it's appropriate to say it before davening. So I said it. Meaning, right, if I say I love Hashem, is it absolutely, we say it, you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your might. Yes, we should love every Jew, yeah, or etc. Can I truly say that I am at that level? Probably not. Does it sound phony? A little bit. But if I will continuously say it and I will continuously bring it to mind, you know what? It'll start to make an imprint. More and more positive experience. If you walk into a perfume shop, even if you don't put on the perfume, you'll smell a little bit like perfume. You hang around the tzaddik long enough, you hang around the concept long enough, you enunciate the concept time and time again, it'll start to have some impact. In the parsha yesterday, we spoke about birthdays, which mentions the birthday of Paro. And we know the Rebbe reinvigorated this custom of making birthdays something that we should take very seriously. And one of the minhagim is to verbalize one's resolutions, to say it out loud. So why do I have to say it out loud? Because we know that when I say something out loud and I say it in front of other people, and they know that I said I'm going to do something, that it makes it more likely that I'm going to do it. And it becomes a sense of accountability. You know, the world has accountability coaches and partners and workout partners and diet partners and study partners, because we understand that when I say it out loud, it adds an energy to it and it adds a sense of obligation. That's what can happen here. It starts to become my nature, where like practice. I right away the Yitzhara says you're a hypocrite. You are just saying that. It's false. There was a man that said, how come every time you talk about Israel, you have to say, no, Israel's not perfect? How come you have to say, no one says America's not, nobody's perfect, right? Why do we always have to point out that Israel's not perfect? Why are we so careful that I can never be a hypocrite to do something good? What if I do something bad? Why don't I say, don't do something bad? What are you, a hypocrite? Yesterday you did good things. Why are you doing bad things? That's hypocritical. So here the Alter Rebbe is already addressing what he is anticipating to be the clamoring of the Yitzhara. You're a phony. This isn't real. It's delusional. You think you have love of Hashem, and you don't. Who are you kidding? Lo yichosh, don't worry. Why? Because it is true. Mitzad atzmai. In your very essence, but bechinas ava misuteres, that love is true. I do love Hashem, just like I do want to be healthy, even though I may eat potato chips. It's not a lie. It's just not manifest at this moment. I do love my children, even though right now I'm upset. But what am I working on then? It is innately true. I'm just working on manifesting it. I'm working on making it come to the fore, like a son who wants to serve his father. And when we do that, not only does it become a good mental exercise, and not only does it set a goal that I'll now be shooting for, it also evokes divine help. God himself steps in and works with us. And here's a quote that you may recall from chapters ago, like in chapter, 15, 16, something like that, where the Alter Rebbe quotes the Talmud that says, a good thought, Hashem connects to a deed. Now, the standard interpretation of that quote is that if you intended to do something good, but somehow it was unnecessary, you went to help somebody, by the time you got there, they had been helped already, so Hashem will still credit you with the mitzvah. That's the standard interpretation of that phrase. The Alter Rebbe earlier in Tanya did a close-in analysis and says, well, the phrase says, a good thought Hashem connects to a deed, not counts as a deed. What does it mean, connects? So the Alter Rebbe used an analogy of a bird. And hopefully you remember that if you have a bird with no wings, it's still a living creature, but it's not very birdy. Sort of the whole distinctive quality of a bird is that it flies. So a bird with no wings, it's still a living creature, but it's kind of missing the point. And the likelihood of its survival in the jungle is pretty minimal, because its whole escape is that it can fly, but it's still living. So to a mitzvah done without love and fear of Hashem. If I do a mitzvah because, I don't know, that's what's expected of me, I do it because that's what we always do, I never thought of it, it's rote, it's just routine, it's the thing that, whatever it is. So it's still a mitzvah, but it's kind of missing the point. And it's not likely to survive my animal soul if I'm just going through mitzvahs without any passion or enthusiasm. And that's really the audience the Alter Rebbe was addressing, in the late 1700s. People who were doing mitzvahs, but they weren't getting much out of it. So here the Alter Rebbe says that if I want to love Hashem, even if at this moment I don't really feel that passion, but I know I should, and I know that I want to, and I'm doing what I can to evoke it, so I get this bonus that Hashem will attach the love that's there, that's hidden, he will bridge that gap to make it go forward. And this, the Alter Rebbe says, like he talked about, like in chapter 30 and 31, as another strategy, that it is as joyous to Hashem as a father whose son was imprisoned and was returned to him. The metaphor there is that our neshama is a part of Hashem, like Hashem's child. And a person back in chapter 30 and 31 is thinking to himself, I'm such a bad person, and I'm so indulgent, and I'm so impatient, and I'm so materialistic. I'm a mess. I'm just a mess. So the Alter Rebbe says, you're right, you're a mess. And you know what? There's a poor neshama that's trapped in your mess. So even though you're a mess, won't you have rachmanis on your neshama that doesn't want to be in the shmutz, and he wants to be connected with Hashem? So if you will then go and do a mitzvah, regardless of the fact that your fingernails are still dirty and you're still a mess, but you will do a mitzvah, you will be doing a kindness, you will be having rachmanis on your neshama by returning it to Hashem, like returning an imprisoned child to his father. And when you do that, you will bring great nachas and joy to the father. And this is what the Alter Rebbe says. So now I'm doing this mitzvah. I am now acting like I love Hashem, even if I don't feel that full passion. Hashem attaches that desire, that innate love to the mitzvah action. And it gives Hashem the great nachas of dispatching my neshama back to Hashem. And again, it fulfills another one of Hashem's greatest desires, which is to be connected with the to make this physical world, as we talked about earlier. As we said, this chapter starts to tie in a lot of things from previous chapters. Back in chapter 36, Hashem wants that this world, we're all familiar with this phrase, should be a place that welcomes God. So think about all the kindnesses that we're doing for Hashem, for our neshama, for ourselves. So even this level that we described earlier, that my soul longs for Hashem, like a child who longs for the love of their parent and to express that love. We talked about the intuitive character of the child to put himself in front of his parent, to protect the parent, that is to put his parent's needs in front of him. That is the desire of the child for the closeness of the parent. Even this level can become accessible to the person. So even this is the Alter Rebbe's argument, so to speak, that even if I say, come on, who am I really kidding? Do I really have this level of closeness with the infinity of Hashem? I don't. And I feel like I'm just being phony about it. So first of all, even if you're being phony, look what a kindness you're doing to Hashem. Look what a kindness you're doing to your neshama. And we've all been in that situation where we can offer friendship to somebody, and we can come to the birthday party. And even if I don't really want to go, but don't think about yourself, think about the people and what it is that they're going to be benefiting from my attendance. My showing up is going to be offering them this sense of closeness and connection and relationship. So here the Alter Rebbe is saying that when you will set out to study Torah, because that's the area that is the intellect, which is what I can always control. Get our rule of thumb. I can always control what I think about. I can't always control what I feel. I can direct what I feel, and I can get myself to feel enough love to do what it is that Hashem wants of me, or I should say enough love that I should follow my intellect, which my intellect I can always engage. So when I say, okay, really, I want to sit on the couch. Really, I want to indulge. And yet Hashem wants me to. So I have to decide, do I love myself more and therefore I sit on the couch, or do I love Hashem more? So I decide intellectually I love Hashem more. I don't feel it. but I know that that's truly what I want. So I compel myself to overcome my impulse. In my example, I get off the couch, I go, and I want to be connected with Hashem. What is an opportunity that's always available to me to be connected with Hashem? Engage my intellect, study Torah. Do I feel a revealed, passionate love for Hashem at that moment? I don't. But I know that I do have that innate love. I know that it's truly there. So I go and I study Torah. And again, studying Torah is just the example because it's always available to us. And even though I don't have that burning, passionate love in my heart, I am in this committing myself to the behavior in the service of Hashem. Ipso facto, as a consequence, Hashem will make that consideration. So when the child says, "Well, I made you the birthday card, but I didn't really want to do it, but I did it because I know that I want to," so the recipient accepts it at that level of love as if it was driven by revealed passion. These two levels. So now the Alter Rebbe anticipates the next counter from the Yitzhar. He says, so you love Hashem, big deal. That's the way you were born. It's like a person is a great artist. Well, your father was Picasso. A person is a great musician. Well, your father is Beethoven. Or a person is a great athlete. Well, your father is an Olympic athlete. So big deal. So you have this love for Hashem. You didn't earn it. You didn't do anything. You haven't added any value. You just inherited it. So what have you accomplished? So then what's the point? You haven't accomplished anything. You're just riding on the coattails of that which came before you. It's just the part of your nature. It's like being tall or left-handed. It's not an accomplishment. And even the sense that you are afraid, not afraid that you're going to get hit, but you're afraid that you'll be separated from Hashem. Again, big deal. What's the big deal? This is the way you were born. Apple became ein nekras b'shem dechila v'rechimotivia. El kshem b'moich machshavto levad b'telumus libay. Vaz makom b'yitzviras the Yitzira. L'shan heim ma'alis imon atayr b'mitzvah sabos machmasan ubisibasa. That it would be true if you were only cruising on your natural intuitive capacities. Meaning, we know that our goal is to turn nature into art. Nature is what Hashem has done. What we do with nature is what we do. That's our objective. Now, it's true that we can act in contradiction to our nature and do bad things. That's distinctive to human beings. The rest of creation, nature, animals, trees, never violate their nature. We may not like it, but that's what their nature is. And human beings are the only creation that has choice. We can choose to do more than our nature, or we can choose to just cruise on our nature, only doing, quote, what we like, or we could even do less than our nature, that is worse than our nature. That's why we can build hospitals, or we can steal, or we can just sort of go through life on cruise control. So the Alter Rebbe has made it very clear that our objective and what we're looking for, and that's why we're learning Tanya, is not just to sort of cruise along on the calm waters of life. Our objective is to transform nature into art, to elevate the opportunities that we have been given. And this is what we do when we use a physical item in the service of Hashem. So we took this food, we made a bracha on it, we used it, the energy to do mitzvahs. We've now elevated it to a level it could never have reached on its own. If we use it gluttonously, then we degrade it. And so the same is true with our own character. It is a given that every Jew loves Hashem. And again, when we say loves, means wants to be connected with Hashem. It's our nature. It's the way we're created. It's the way we came out of the box. If we just love Hashem to the degree of our nature, then we haven't really added value. The Alter Rebbe, not in Tanya, but in a different essay, he uses an analogy of a financial investment. If I have $100 and I invest it, and after 2 months I get back $100, I've lost 2 months of time. So if Hashem puts my neshama in the world for 120 years, and I bring it back exactly the way it was when he gave it to me. So it just wasted 120 years, and it's less valuable because of the wasted opportunity. Our goal is to grow the business. So here it might feel like, well, I'm not really growing the business. I'm only acting out of my nature. And if only acting out of my nature because it's my nature to love Hashem, then quote unquote, what have I done? What have I contributed? Nothing. I haven't added any value. And as such, my love of Hashem is worthless. So again, this is the Yitzhara's ploy. You think you love Hashem? All you're doing, that's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do. Either because your parents taught you, or even you say, they didn't teach me, but I learned it last week, so now I know. So that's it. I'm not doing anything of value. The Alter Rebbe says, and as we learned earlier, this is again another reference to an earlier chapter about the level of closeness with Hashem that our mitzvahs reach, depending on the quantity of lift that they are endowed with via the love and fear that we attach to them. So remember, and this is a reference to an earlier chapter, so hopefully everyone remembers, well, just for a moment, that there are 4 stages of awareness of Hashem called the 4 worlds. They're not places, they're not planets. They're 4 stages of awareness. We live in the stage of least awareness. We go about our day, we're busy with ourselves. Oh yeah, Hashem is like an afterthought. So when we do a mitzvah, we get outside of that. We're no longer only obsessed with what we have to do. So we're one world above that. That's the world called the world of Yitzira. This means the world of art or nuance. Here isn't really the primary place where it's discussed. When we do mitzvahs, we're getting out of this world because we're not obsessed only with buy me, take me, get me, which is the nature of this world, like every other creation in this world, like an animal. We don't expect an animal to be concerned with anything other than its own survival. So when we act above an animal, and we're not only concerned with our survival, we've gotten out of this world. We've only gotten out of it one step. But when we reveal the love in our heart, not just, oh yeah, I have to, I'm supposed to, it's my obligation, which again takes me higher than an animal in an odd way. Even if I stop at a stop sign, I have gotten above an animal. I've thought about something other than just what my impulse is. I want to be there. Why should I stop? Because there's a stop sign. An animal doesn't stop at stop signs. But here, when I not only act out of my intuitive love of Hashem, and this is why the Alter Rebbe is describing that this love that we have uncovered through our intellect should not be diminished. Don't listen to the Yitzhara that sort of wants to marginalize and say it's not that big a deal and don't be so enthusiastic about it. You haven't really done anything. It's not to that degree. When it is revealed in the heart, it is stirred up in the heart. When that level of love, it's not just I think about it, but now I get sort of enthusiastic about it. Now I get, like we would say, animated. Now I have elevated myself and my relationship to Hashem, not just above only acting out of self-interest. Everybody else is going to be busy engaging in the pursuit of the material, and I am taking time to be in pursuit of the spiritual. It's a wonderful thing. I'm not diminishing it. But that gets me one level above nature. But here we're talking about when the person is passionately enthusiastic about it. Now he's a whole other level. And in the Kabbalistic terminology, this is the world or the stage of awareness called Bria. I'm getting back to my creator. Now, the Torah and mitzvahs that I do with this enthusiasm, which I'm hopefully reflecting here in my voice, is now elevated to a whole other level. And again, hopefully we've all touched this, whether it's Shabbos or it's when we're doing some sort of mitzvah or we're engaged in something. Now we're not living in the physical world. So what's happened now? We're not just acting out of routine. We're not even acting only out of social compulsion. We're not only acting out of, there's more to life than just what's in it for me. We're now acting at an elevated, engaged, spiritual awareness. It's true that is my natural skill. But don't diminish that and say, well, you're just acting out of nature. Because we do have to engage in labor to use the intellect to stir up that character. Because the statistics are, it's just going to lay low. Statistically, we just rise to the level of our expectation, and that's it. We don't innately go beyond. And the Alter Rebbe is, it's very much a Hanukkah message. Tonight we'll light one candle, everyone will cheer. Tomorrow night, if you light one candle, you did the mitzvah. That is literally the mitzvah to light one candle every night. On the 8th night, you light one candle, you did the mitzvah, you make a bracha, that's fine. But there's no passion to it. There's no enthusiasm to it. I'm just looking for, what's my minimal obligation, and leave me alone. So Hanukkah is very much this message. One candle is great. Tomorrow night, it's okay. Why? Yesterday was great. Yesterday was yesterday. Now it's got to be two. There's got to be this elevation. And when we do that, we are thinking now that Hashem is truly my life, because that's what makes me go more. What's the difference between the obligation and the passion is, what do I do when it's quitting time? If it's only my obligation, so comes quitting time, I stop. If I go to the store and they say it's $2, I pay them $2. I don't say, well, I'll give you $3, because that's purely transactional. When I want to give a gift to my dearest friend, I don't say, well, what's the least amount I got to give him, and he's still going to like me. I want to give him all I can. She is beinus borein soif chayachayim baruchu k'mayim yo bina liba ba lev mev. Like it says that in that world of bria, which is now 2 steps above our natural state. And again, hopefully you remember this idea of the 4 stages of awareness. It's a little more complex here. Click here to see about it much earlier in Tanya, like on chapter 15 and 16. But here the Alter Rebbe is referencing this idea that how do we reach that level? Through intellectual analysis, even though it feels very mechanical. I'm engaging my intellect. This is about love, because the intellect stirs the love. So one strategy of the Yitzira was, well, it's just natural love anyway. You didn't really do anything. The other strategy is it's too mechanical. It's just like pretending. But here the Alter Rebbe is assuring us that when we engage the intellect, we are actually reaching this loftier level. Not only that, these 2 levels of love, that is the love born of my analysis. I see the watch must be the watchmaker, like we talked about, that I have appreciation for something greater than myself, because I see what it creates, and this more overflowing level of love that's not describable. Why do you love your children? Why do you love? I mean, it's not something that you can describe. That this level of love is actually linked to something greater than purely of the intellect. It's not just an academic thing. It does require effort, and that's why we should not dismiss this level of love and say, well, it's no big deal, and what have I truly accomplished? That's a tact of the Yitzhahara. He is just trying to minimize it, say, well, what have you done anyway? Because there is the effort that is necessary, and again, since our goal is to turn nature into art, that means that we have to engage effort and labor, and the effort and labor is to transform what is innate into what is obvious. Habam is mehatvuna vedas b'dulas Hashem k'dei lahagdil medudas eish ava brish ve'es l'shalheves ozav v'lahav v'oila shemaima at shemaim ram l'choy lichbes. Since we do engage our intellect, there is true effort that is in fact necessary here to bring about this passionate love. Because what happens when we have a greater passion? We have to be careful for the turned up attempts of the animal soul. And here the Alter Rebbe uses a metaphor from Shlomo HaMelech, who said that abundant waters cannot extinguish my love for Hashem. So we're talking about using, turning up the fire. What happens when we turn up the fire? The animal soul starts to turn up the water. What is the water? So Chassidus explains the water is material concerns. How can I be passionate about Hashem? I have this problem, I have that problem. It's actually in today's Hayom Yom, where the person is talking about as they're getting ready for Shabbos. So in the Psalm for Wednesday, every day in the davening we say today is one day to Shabbos, 2 days. The Psalm for Wednesday at the end, it has the first line of the Friday night davening where it says "L'chuna ranana," come let us celebrate. So that's on Shabbos. But on Wednesday, when we're in the middle of the marketplace, as we call it, we think, how am I going to have Shabbos? I'm going to come Shabbos. I have this thing to worry about and that thing to worry about. We have so much to worry about. It's all legit. So it starts, how can I, as it says in Hayom Yom, we can't naranana. We don't have that ability to celebrate. So what do? We start to learn Hasidus. Why is learning? So one is, it's escapism. Stop thinking about all your worries and go and learn. But that's not a bad thing. Just like, sometimes you put on a little music, you have a glass of wine, it cures your ills. It's not innately a bad thing. More profoundly, what it reminds us is that we are not trapped in our Gashmius Mishigas. We're not trapped in it. It's hard. It's a hard thing because, there's this problem and that problem and and on and on and on. And it could become like defeating Mayim Rabim. These waters, how am I going to stop these waters? But this is what the Alter Rebbe says, that since we engage the intellect, that becomes the fuel that fires it up. Another very, Hanukkah message, so that don't underestimate the value of our activity. And that's what will fire it up and protect it from the waters. And the rivers cannot overrun it. So no matter how much I can pile up all the tsaris in the world and the corona and the shmonona and the this thing and the variant and the gashmis and they go on and on forever. I mean, it's very overwhelming. That's mayim rabim, abundant waters. And what's going to counter the abundant waters? Mind fueling the heart. Now, you can't get these Lubavitchers down. It's better that way. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. There is a distinctive characteristic that is superior to love that is generated by the intellect, not created, generated, kickstarted, rather than just a love of appreciation. Again, I see the watch, I appreciate the watchmaker. How much do I appreciate the watchmaker? As much as I appreciate the watch. I have overflowing love. That's great. But again, it's sort of uncontrollable and therefore potentially subject to tomorrow. I'm in a bad mood. Or something happened that got me off my game. I was all excited, enthusiastic, and then something happened and I became frustrated. When the love is driven by the intellect, so the intellect can never be corrupted, because I always know Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. I always know that God is one. I know that. No matter what, I know that. And if that is fueling the fire of my love, then no thing, no matter, no water can squash it. And therefore, that is greater than just my appreciation of the watchmaker. It's even greater than this intuitive, I just love Hashem. So this is Alter Rebbe's double down. It's not just not a big deal, like, hey, you just kickstarted what was already there. It's vastly more profound than that. Like we'll say later on in chapter 50, it's like the virtue of gold over silver. On the one hand, gold is worth more than silver, but if you have enough silver, it's worth more than a little gold. So if gold is worth 50 times what silver is worth, so if you have 51 times as much silver, you're. But then there's certain distinctive characteristics to gold that are incomparable to silver, no matter what. And this is what the Alter Rebbe is saying. Gold doesn't just mean better, it means unique, that the characteristic of a love generated by the intellect is superior to just innate love. Well, I love Hashem, or I love Hashem because he makes the best watches, in that, or similar to the love that gold has over silver, because it is constant and non-extinguishable. That's the point. Like we'll talk about later on in chapter 50. The Gamzeh call ha'adam v'tachlisoi laman da'as kved Hashem v'yikar teferes gedulasoi. Because this is the whole distinctive quality of Adam. And as we've always talked about, Adam is aleph over dam. Dam is blood or biological function. The aleph that precedes the dam, when the aleph, the oneness of Hashem, guides, directs, controls, shapes our biology, dam, blood, meaning our biology, we become the distinctive quality of the human being. We are elevated beyond our biological impulse. And that's the distinctive quality. So not only, again, it feels like, well, this is like, phony, or it's not so intense. These people, they just love Hashem, and I have to think about it. So we start to get the sense that our love of Hashem is perhaps less genuine, less meaningful, more mechanical, and therefore not as good or not as valuable. So the Alter Rebbe doesn't just pat us on the head and say, no, it's just as good, or it's good too. Here the Alter Rebbe points out that it is a superior level when a person has intuitive love. So the intuitive is, it comes and maybe it goes. When he has love, that's appreciation of a certain factor. So again, I'm in awe of the watchmaker. You know what? One day I might be a better watchmaker and make better watches. So it comes and goes. When it's a love that's fueled by the intellect, that stirs that innate love, it's non-extinguishable, can't be extinguished. And this is the whole goal. This is the distinctive quality. So it's not just okay, tolerable, functional, useful. It is the objective. As it says in the Raya Mehemna, which is a book of the Kabbalah, and Parshas Bay. All right, this ends the chapter.